The NFL free agent open tampering period is set to begin in less than 24 hours. Today, we're going to take a look at all of the free agent options the 49ers should go after when that opens up. Next on Inside the 49ers with Jack Hammer. Good morning. The 49ers are set to begin the free agency tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock. That is when the open tampering period in the NFL will begin. So teams are going to be able to start negotiating with players. We're going to be hearing about Team X is interested in player Y. This player has agreed to a contract with this team. We're going to be hearing all that. That's going to start tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. Pacific time. The open tampering period of NFL free agency will begin. Those contracts won't become official, however, until 1 p.m. on Wednesday, the 15th. That is the official start date of NFL free agency. But Monday, tomorrow, it's going to be kicking off. So I wanted to come in and give you guys my view in terms of who the 49ers should target at each position of need. There's a lot of them. There's a lot of places that they can go. So we'll go through each of those areas. We're also going to talk a little bit about Brock Purdy. The most recent news after his surgery on Friday was successful. We'll talk a little bit about what to look for with Brock Purdy, how that could impact the 49ers offseason plans, especially at the quarterback position, and how that impacts Trey Lance, and so on. So we'll be getting into all that. And before we get started real quick, I just want to shout out Lucas Pesci. He comes over to us from Austria. Lucas is a member of the Toolbox. He says, "Hey, Jack. Hey, Lucas, good to have you on board." So let's get into it. Let's take a look. About a week and a half ago, I had gone through and listed out my top 5 areas of need for the 49ers this offseason. And the top spot for me is going to be safety. So we'll work our way back. So before we get there, one thing I wanted to talk about really quick was the 49ers draft choices. You may have heard the 49ers were awarded 7 compensatory picks in this year's draft. Those 7 bring their total this season for the draft up to 11. So 11 picks in this draft for the 49ers. And it's going to kick off. Their first pick is going to be at number 99 in the 3rd round. So if they stick with what they have and they don't change, make any trades or anything like that, they're going to have their first draft pick come up at number 99. Then they also have another one at 101, 102. So they have 3 third-round picks there. Those are all compensatory picks that come from those compensatory picks all come from the minority hiring protocol that the NFL put into place. So you look at what the 49ers have done recently. They've done a great job of developing coaches and developing front office staff. And so they were awarded with 3 compensatory picks in the 3rd round. Mike McDaniels, Robert Saleh becoming head coaches along with D'Amico Ryans, and then Martin Mayhew and Rand Carthon being hired as general managers. So the 49ers get 3 third-round picks as a result. 99, 101, and 102. Then you drop down to the 5th round where they have a couple of picks there, 157 and 173. One of those is a compensatory pick. They received 1 compensatory pick at number 216. And then in the 7th round, they have 4 picks at 224, 249, 253, and 255. Now, and in that area, 2 of those were compensatory picks. So a total of 7, 11 picks. Ferners are going to have a lot of options when the draft period comes. That may impact their moves that they make here in free agency as well. Typically, what you see with the 49ers is they like to go out and they will supplant. They'll get guys through free agency. Usually, those are the players that are on the lower fringe in terms of the cost, and then they'll still go out and draft at those positions as well. It's almost like they're setting themselves up so that if their draft picks don't work out, they have a player that's a vet that can step in and go right away. So it'll be interesting to see how these draft choices impact the 49ers as they go forward. But let's take a look at it. Like I said, I want to go through all of the positions of need for the 49ers. My top 5 are center would be number 5. Number 4 for me in terms of the needs for the Flyers are right tackle, then defensive end is third, tight ends is second, and safety would be my top area of need for the 49ers. And I base that off of the fact that right now the 49ers don't have a safety opposite of Talon Hufanga that has starting experience. They don't have anybody really young there either. So they have George Odom, who's a terrific special teams player, but beyond that, don't have much. So we'll get into all of those as well as kickers and wide receivers. We'll get into the quarterbacks a little bit. And like I said, we'll do a little bit of Brock Purdy as well. So let's get it started. Let's look at some of the targets that I have for the center position for San Francisco. And let's go ahead and we'll kick that off. Number one target that I think the team should look at is Jake Brendel. You look at the numbers and what it's going to cost them to bring Jake Brendel back. The projected contract right now per PFF is only $4.5 million over 2 years. That's a number that works really well with the 49ers and where they are, I think. You know, you look at what they've done this last season. Brendel stepped into the starting role for the first time in his career. He went into last season having only 3 starts over a 6-year period. Last year played all 17 games and was named to the Pro Bowl as an alternate in his first year. You know, you look at Brendel, you look at his combine numbers, and they match up well with what you see on the field. A player who is very athletic, does a very good job in pass protection, does a really good job of moving around. If there's one thing that you look at Brendel and you say, maybe there's a little bit of weakness there, I would say it's the power in the power area. You know, in terms of run blocking, he doesn't really move guys at the line of scrimmage very well. That's again, he's not the biggest guy. He's more of an athlete at that spot, but he proved that he could be the quarterback of the offensive line this year. The way that they played, the offensive line as a whole this season performed the best out of any group under Kyle Shanahan. If you look at the metrics of sacks, quarterback hits, those types of things from the pass protection standpoint, the best of any group that over the 6-year period that Kyle Shanahan's been here with the 49ers. And then the running game as well. They were around over 4.5 yards per carry on the ground. So a nice improvement over 2021. And they did that despite having Brendel, a first year, first time full-time starter there in 2022, along with 2 rookies on either side of them. Well, not 2 rookies, excuse me, but 2 first-year starters on either side of them as well. Aaron Banks, the second-year player, making his first start this season, and then Spencer Burford at right guard. So that interior of the 49ers, in terms of playing experience, very young. I would say Jake Brendel would be a really strong option to bring back for the 49ers. It's going to be expensive, plays pretty well. That allows you, if it's a two-year contract, to be able to draft a guy that you think is going to be your long-term solution at that position, and you can do it maybe a little bit later in the draft. It just doesn't really matter. You're going to be able to give him time to develop. So that's Jake Brendel. The next name at center would be Bradley Bozeman. You might not know him. He was the starting center this season over the last 11 games for the Carolina Panthers. Bozeman going to be more expensive than Jake Brendel. You know, you look at Bozeman, he was a 5th-round pick of the Baltimore Ravens back in 2018. He's from Alabama. He's an offensive lineman there from the Crimson Tide. He signed a 1-year deal with Carolina for 2022. Didn't start the beginning of the season there, but their starting center was injured. He stepped into the lineup, and in 11 starts with the Panthers, the team went 6-5. That's positive. But the bigger thing when you look at Bozeman's numbers last year, he does a decent job in pass protection, but the Carolina rushing attack really turned around over those 11 games that Bozeman was the starter. They averaged 151.6 yards per game on the ground. So there's your difference between Bozeman and Brendel. It really comes to the strength portion of it. He can move. He can do all those things. Bozeman is a guy who has experience at both center and guard as well. So he has versatility, which is something the 49ers like. He can move around. But in this case, if you're going to give him a 3 or $13.5 million contract, you're bringing him in to be your starting center, not necessarily anything that he can do anywhere else. So Bozeman, though, that's a name to keep an eye on. And then last but not least, this is a name I've seen thrown around quite a bit. Ethan Pocic from the Browns. This is a different one, though, because his contract, you're looking at a guy who is in line to make $7 million a year, 3 years, $21 million is the projected contract for Pocic. He was originally a second-round draft pick of the Seahawks. So you start to look at these and you wonder why the numbers are so much different for each one. Well, part of it's because Pocic was a high draft pick, so his numbers have always been on the higher end compared to the fifth-round pick in Bozeman and the undrafted free agent of Brendel. He was a 2017 pick of the Seahawks, but he struggled with injuries while he was up with Seattle. He signed a one-year deal with Cleveland last offseason, and he had a good year in 2022 with the Browns. He was able to stay healthy, and you look at it, and he had the best season of his career. Now he's going to look to cash in on that. So 3 years, $21 million. One of the things to think about here, though, when you look at Pocic, is who is he playing around? I talked a minute ago about Big Brendel and the fact that he had first-year starters on either side of him. You look at a guy like Pocic, and it's a different scenario altogether. He had two guys on either side of him who have been around for a long time, have been very successful in the NFL that helped them out. Two of the highest paid guards in the NFL, in Joel Bitonio and Wyatt Teller. So this is the guy in Pocic who went to a spot where he has good guys around him, and you saw his game elevate compared to a guy like Jake Brendel, who was able just to step in to a situation with two rookies, and not two rookies, but two first-year starters, and elevate their game overall. So good stuff there for the 49ers. I think that you look at this again, my three possibilities for the 49ers, the guys that I would look at the center position here in free agency: Jake Brendel, bringing him back 2 years, $44.5 million. Bradley Bozeman from the Panthers, 3 years, $13.5 million, or Ethan Pocic from the Browns, projected contract of 3 years, $21 million. So those are my three options for the center spot. Now, one thing is, as I'm going through my list, if there's questions that you guys have, please make sure you ask them over in the comment section. I'll be jumping over there and making sure that I answer your questions. Anything you have come with regards to 49ers free agency or the quarterback positions when we get there, let me know, and we'll make sure that we answer that. So that's the center position as I see it right now, though. Let's move over to the next one that I have, which is right tackle. So at the right tackle spot, this is, you have Mike McGlinchey, who is coming off of one of his better years. McGlinchey he's up and down in his career. There were a lot of question marks around Mike McGlinchey going into the 2022 season. If you recall, he had torn the quad ligament in his leg against the Arizona Cardinals to end his 2021 season. That's a tough injury to come back from. So there were a number of questions around his ability just to return, let alone play at a decent level. And I would say that you look at what he was able to do this year, and it was pretty strong overall. McGlinchey, this is one who I would put him as a target. I don't think it's going to happen. All signs point to McGlinchey playing elsewhere in 2023, potentially a big loss for San Francisco, I think. But we'll see how that all works out. But again, he's the 2018 first-round pick of the Flyers. He played well. He returned, and he set himself up for a big payday. I would expect to see him playing elsewhere next year. The other target, this is a name that I've seen thrown around quite a bit, and it makes a lot of sense. I like this player. It's Caleb McGarry of the Atlanta Falcons. You look at him, he was a 2019 first-round selection. The Falcons chose not to utilize the fifth-year option with him, so that's why he's becoming an unrestricted free agent. And McGarry just happened to have the best season of his career in 2022. He's a really strong run-blocking tackle. That's the biggest area for him. When you look at his strength, sounds very similar to Mike McGlinchey. He's shown continual improvement in pass protection. Again, sounds very similar to Mike McGlinchey. And for me, I have him on this list, but I don't know if this is a name that's going to be able to stick around for the 49ers or if it even makes sense. If Mike McGlinchey signs a 4-year, $64 million contract, you look at what McGarry has expected. His projection is 4 years, $60 million. I don't think the 49ers lose out on a player, bringing a player back and just to spend $1 million per year less, for example, on a McGarry. So we'll see what happens, but that's the next name that I have. And then the third one at right tackle is Jermaine Illuminor from the Raiders. He's much lower in terms of his projected contract. It's 2 years, $7.5 million. That seems to fit right in with where the 49ers would be looking. You look at him, he's with the Raiders. He has been mostly a swing tackle guard type of prospect for the 49ers, for the Raiders throughout his career. But in 2022, he played a career high 940 offensive snaps. And he played well. He allowed just 3 sacks, 3 quarterback hits on the season. He has versatility across the line of scrimmage, which fits what the 49ers look for. He's played all across the offensive line, and 49ers like that kind of stuff. So I could see him being a player that the 49ers would bring in to compete with Colt McKivitz. If he doesn't win that job, doesn't beat him out, he's in competition with some other folks there, for that swing tackle spot if McKivitz wins it outright. And who knows, the 49ers might draft a right tackle who joins that competition. And again, if Illuminor can't win the job, then he becomes a candidate for a swing spot, battling with a rookie or McKivitz, however that position plays out. But that would be a 2-year. Again, he's projected to get a 2-year contract, about $7.5 million. So you're looking at, in the ballpark of a $4.5 million cap hit in the first year, much lower than McGlinchey or McGarry. Not a big name, not somebody that throws, gets you excited, but a solid right tackle prospect for the 49ers on the lower end. So let me answer a couple of questions over here. We got a couple of them in the comments. We have Harold, who wants to know where Jalen Ramsey went. Jalen Ramsey, I don't know if you heard, was traded from the Rams to the Miami Dolphins this morning. So Jalen Ramsey joins Mike McDaniel out there with the Miami Dolphins. They've done quite a bit out there in Miami. They've made a bunch of big moves. They've swung for the fences quite a bit. They did that a lot, last offseason with the Tyreek Hill addition, and they made a bunch of moves for the Dolphins just to come up with the same record that they had the year before at 9-8. They're going to have Tua Tagovailoa. They're bringing him back for this year as their quarterback. It's going to be a similar process with them again. Now they're bringing in Jalen Ramsey, an older cornerback who we've seen plenty here in the NFC West. Good for them. They're making moves. Good for the Miami Dolphins. Make those moves, and keep going 9-5 or 9-8 and 10-6, 10-7, getting bumped out in the first round of the playoffs year after year. Keep spending your money. That's good. That's the one thing with Mike McDaniel out there in Miami. They've tried to give him a lot of players around him. He needs to somehow get better than the guy that was there before. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with Jalen Ramsey. Let's see what else we have. Daniel Garcia says 2 possible centers besides Brendel for the 49ers. Pro Bowl center Jones, who was released by the Titans. Yes, that's another one. You also have the Ryan Kelly from the Colts. Possibly there as well. I think there's a bunch of different names here. You look at Jones; he's a little bit on the older side. A couple of guys from the AFC there that have at some point been a Pro Bowler. I think you'll see the 49ers looking at all those guys as well. So those are 2 good names. Thank you for passing those along, Daniel. And I agree, Brian. The chat is good. You guys are always great in this thing. So let's move on. We've done the first 2. We had center and right tackle. Next up is defensive end. I think this is one that a lot of people have been looking at. And you look at the 49ers going into 2023, and the big thing is, how are the 49ers what are they going to do opposite of Nick Bosa? You have Bosa, one of the top pass rushers in the NFL. They haven't really been strong opposite of him in recent years. So who do you go out and get to be that speed rusher, that power, that guy that can get to the quarterback opposite of Nick Bosa? And the big name that I would put on this list, there's a couple of them, but the first one is going to be Yannick Ngakoue. Ngakoue was with the Colts in 2022. You look at his projection in terms of salary, projected contract, and it's going to be 2 years, $25 million. Ngakoue is a pass rush specialist. He's recorded at least 8 sacks in each of his first 7 seasons. So that's what really makes him attractive here with the 49ers. If they can add 8 sacks to their team, that's great, especially when you consider, It's 3 more than what they've been getting, right? This last season, the number 2 person on the NFL on the 49ers in terms of sacks, you had Nick Bosa at 18.5, but number 2 was Samson Ebicom with only 5, and then it went down from there. And so if you can get Ngakoue, bring him in, get those 8 sacks, that's a bonus for this team. The other thing with Ngakoue is that he has a lot of experience in the Y9, and that's what the 49ers run. Makes him a perfect fit there, really. And so make him a solid threat opposite of Nick Bosa. So Unique Ngakoue, if you can get him for 2 years, $25 million, just split that up. That's $12.5 million per season, whatever. If you can bring him in, that's a good deal for the 49ers. I think that's a spot that you would really like to try to build it up in terms of having a strong pass rusher opposite of Nick Bosa. We start off with Unique Ngakoue as the number 1 option for the 49ers at defensive end. And then from there, you look at number 2 and Agbonia Okoronkwo. I'm sorry, I'm ruining this one. Agbonia Okoronkwo. He was with the Houston Texans last year. You look at his, he was originally a 2018 5th-round draft pick of the Los Angeles Rams. He moved on to the Texans last season, and he was able to find a bigger role. He had a career-high 518 snaps, and makes sense that you have more snaps, you have more sacks. His sack total didn't really increase as much as it just his opportunities to make sack to get there. He just had more opportunities to play, and with opportunities, he was able to make the most of it. This is a guy who, you're looking here with Okoronkwo, 2 years, $11 million, so about $5.5 million. That's about the same number the 49ers were paying Samson Ebicom. So you're getting a guy who's only going into his 5th season in the NFL. That's a good contract. Like I said, a career high 5 sacks last year, playing 518 snaps. He'd probably get around that same number with the 49ers, depending on what happens with Drake Jackson. Drake Jackson's going to, the 49ers took him last year in the 2nd round. I think they're going to really want to push him to play a lot, and as long as he can stay strong. So I wouldn't see that if they went with somebody like Okoronkwo here, he's probably going to get about 518 snaps, might even be a little high. But if he can come in and produce 4-5 sacks for that total, that'd be good. And again, I think Drake Jackson has a lot to do with what they're doing here as well. The other name would be Marcus Golden, and he just became a free agent. He was released by the Cardinals. He's going to be on the low end in terms of cap, I would expect, probably about a year, $5 million. Veteran pass rusher. He's been up and down throughout his career. You look at him, and it's really good one year, down the next. He had 11 sacks for Arizona back in 2021, right after they brought him back from a short stint with the New York Giants. And then this past season, tanked 2.5 sacks in 2022. So you kind of have this up and down with Marcus Golden, a lack of consistency there. It seems like every time he gets a little bit of a change of scenery, things go up and then they come back down. So you bring him in for a year, you try to maximize what he can do. But again, he's a speed rusher. Bring him off the edge opposite of Bosa. Give Drake Jackson a little bit of a rest every once in a while. I think that would be a possibility to go after there. So for my 3, once again, my 3 targets when it comes to defensive ends, Unique Ngakoue from the Colts, Agbonia Okoronkwo from the Texans, and Marcus Golden from the Cardinals. Those would be the 3 to keep an eye on at defensive end for the 49ers. And Rob doing a good job. He says, I hit that like button. Good show, Jack. Thank you, Rob. If you guys could hit the like button as we're going through, that'd be fantastic. Daniel Garcia says, I like Golden, intrigued by Clowney as well, just as a rotational pass rusher. That's a good name too. Clowney's a guy who he's never quite become the player that everybody expected him to be. He had a couple of highlight reel plays in college that really helped him make a name for himself. And he's a good player. Don't get me wrong. He's a good player. He's never been the difference maker that people thought he was going to be. But if you can bring Jadeveon Clowney in as a situational pass rusher, if you'd be willing to do that with the 49ers, this would be a terrific signing as well. Daniel Garcia with a good call there. Jadeveon Clowney. And like Harold says, though, he's always hurt, but he's always coming through on key games, clutch time. Clowney is hurt, but if you're looking at him more as if you bring him in, you're looking at him, I think, as more as a rotational, situational type of pass rusher. He's not going to be an every down player. So maybe you're able to eliminate some of those injury concerns with Jadeveon Clowney. Sliding over now, the next one for me, my second biggest need, I think, on the 49ers. Tight end. You look at the tight end spot right now, the 49ers don't have really anything outside of George Kittle at tight end. Yes, Charlie Warner is under contract. Charlie Warner can't catch the ball, though. And so the 49ers need to bring in some tight ends. They're going to probably bring in a couple. This past season, they had 4 on the roster, on the active roster. I would expect to see them make a move here during free agency, and I'd also expect to see them make a move during the draft as well. I think you're going to see a couple of tight ends added to this roster. You could even see one take early draft at tight end. So let's take a look at a couple of names that I came up with in terms of free agent tight ends. Number one, Austin Hooper. Austin Hooper, Bay Area guy, went to school at De La Salle. Then he went to Stanford. He was with the Titans in 2022. You look at his projected contract, 2 years, $17 million. He was a third-round selection of the Atlanta Falcons when Friars head coach Kyle Shanahan was there serving as the offensive coordinator. You look at Hooper, and he provides the type of receiving threat the Friars have been seeking in recent years. This goes all the way back to 2020. You saw them trying to bring in a solid pass receiving option as a second tight end. I think Hooper, they had interest in him. I believe it was last year before he ultimately signed with the Titans. So I would think that with Hooper being a unrestricted free agent, the 49ers would be in on him again this season. It would make a ton of sense. Like I said, he's a local guy from the Bay Area in terms of high school and college. He's a veteran. He's got great hands compared to what they've been dealing with. So, Austin Hooper, I think, would be my top selection. 2 years, $17 million, maybe a little on the high side there, but only a 2-year contract. That's not a bad deal. I'm going to stay local for the next one as well. Josh Oliver, he's been with the Ravens. He has a projected contract of 3 years, just $10.5 million. So just a little over $3 million. Oliver is a former San Jose State Spartan. He was taken by Jacksonville with the 69th selection of the 2019 draft. Nice spot for him there. Oliver played all 17 games for the first time in his career this past season with the Ravens. He was with the Ravens there. You look at Oliver. He's primarily known for his prowess as a run blocker. However, he finished last year with 14 catches for 149 yards and a couple of touchdowns, which would be a big improvement for the 49ers at that tight end 2 position. They haven't received very much out of that spot in recent years. And this is a guy, like I said, he's a local kid who I think would be a good fit. The fact that he's a strong run blocker, that's a big bonus for him. Could really probably push Charlie Warner for that run blocking role. But then you bring in the hands, 14 catches, 149 yards, and a couple of touchdowns. Josh Oliver from the Baltimore Ravens, unrestricted free agent at tight end. That would be one of my targets if I'm the 49ers. And then last but not least, Robert Tonyan. This is a big name. I think most people are going to recognize. He's been with the Packers. He has, over his career in Green Bay, he has put up 1,437 yards and 17 touchdowns, playing with Aaron Rodgers, quarterback that gets you the ball quite a bit. He's a solid route runner. He's dropped only one of his 67 targets that went towards him in 2022. Tanyan's going to be a little bit more expensive. He's just a little bit less than Hooper, but more than Oliver. 2 years, $10 million is the projected number for Tanyan there. Had some injury history back in 2021. Was fine in 2022. Again, not a big amount of production, but 1,400 yards and 17 touchdowns as your number 2 tight end with the 49ers would be a big improvement over what they've received even over that time period that Tanyan put those numbers up. So Austin Hooper, number 1, Josh Oliver, number 2. I like Oliver really because of the run blocking. I think there's a possibility when you look at the 49ers, they want to get a receiving tight end, but they're also going to, I think, want to improve their blocking as well in terms of the run blocking. So that's where Oliver comes in. And then Robert Tonyan rounding out the pack in terms of the tight ends. I agree with Harold. Says no Butterfingers tight ends or receivers. Absolutely. So again, That's where you bring in one of the three that I mentioned, especially Oliver, with his ability to catch the ball. I think you start to look at that, or Tanyan, excuse me. He had 67 targets, just a one drop. So good stuff, I think, from any of those three. Gonna jump over to a couple of comments real quick. We have Daniel Garcia in here. He says, Jack, who would you bring back at defensive tackle, Givens or Ridgeway? Don't believe they make an offer to both, seeing that Kinlaw will be here for one more year and Kalia Davis is being up next. Well, Givens is back. He's already under contract. So Kevin Givens is going to be a 49er. Hassan Ridgeway, that might be an option. I think T.Y. McGill might be even a better option than Ridgeway. He played really well when he was given a chance. So Givens will be back. Kalia Davis, I do agree with you, Daniel, that he's the next man up. You look at the 49ers in that interior of their defensive line. You have Eric Armstead. You have Javon Kinlaw. Seen a lot of Kinlaw workout videos in the last couple of weeks. You have Kevin Givens, Kalia Davis. You have a good group of players already. I think T.Y. McGill would be another one to add. Barry Baller jumps in, still looking at the tight end positions. He says, I'm looking at Irv Smith as he has a potential high upside tight end. He's been banged up, but he's talented. That's another good name to look at there. I'm trying to keep the list short, but yeah, Irv Smith would be another one that the 49ers need to. They can bring in almost anybody and have an upgrade over what they have right now. Because like I said, Charlie Warner, he just can't catch the ball. The guy had 2 balls coming to him last year, 2 big throws. Couldn't catch either one of them. The first one was the drop against Denver. You might recall that one. And then they threw the pass down the seam. Garoppolo hit him in Atlanta, hit him right in the hands, and he dropped it. Kyle Shanahan never threw the ball at him again throughout the rest of the season. That's partly why we saw so much of why he wasn't in there that often. Why it was the other guy that was in there that they gave up the sack on Purdy in the NFC Championship game. So. Yeah, I agree with you on this one too. And we're going to get the defensive tackles in a little bit, but I agree with you on Poona Ford. If the 49ers can get Poona Ford, that would be a big one. Akeem Hicks, another really nice player as well. Both these guys are a little bit more on the expensive side. Neither one of them make my list of 3, but Poona Ford is one. If the 49ers decide they want to spend a little bit more money at the defensive tackle spot, that's a good signing. Same thing with Akeem Hicks. I just think both those guys are going to be a little bit more on the higher end than what the 49ers would typically use, kind of in the middle to end of their rotational piece on their defensive line. They just don't seem to want to spend very much there. So since you brought it up real quick, let's go to that. Let's go hit up the defensive tackle spot. We just did defensive ends, tight ends. Let's take a look at defensive tackle targets really quick. The list that I had put together. I have 4 actually on mine. I have Jerry Tillery from the Raiders, 1 year, $3.5 million. I think that's a pretty good deal for the 40. Would be a good deal for the 49ers. They had interest in Tillery before he signed with the Raiders this last year. So that's a name that would make sense. Kerry Hyder, a lot of versatility there. Don't get it. He's a solid veteran piece. You bring a guy like Kerry Hyder back because he's not going to be expensive, probably about 1 year, kind of on a vet minimum type of deal, 1.25 million. So Jerry Tillery, Kerry Hyder. If you want to get into the more expensive defensive tackles, David Onyemata from the New Orleans Saints, I think that would be a direction that they'd go there if it was a little bit more on the more expensive side. A name that I really like and probably would be my top target of guys not on the 49ers already would actually be going down to Los Angeles and picking up Greg Gaines. Young guy, just 26 years old. He was a big part of the Rams' Super Bowl success in 2021. Did a really good job stopping the run. You go back and you watch that NFC Championship game and you see what really stands out is Greg Gaines, disruption in the backfield, and then the play at safety of Eric Weddle, and the job that Gaines and Weddle did really was key to stopping that 49ers offense in that NFC Championship game back in 2021. Gaines like I said, he's a little bit younger guy. He's productive though. 2 years, $3 million. If you can do that and get him in here for that cheap, that's the kind of contract I think the 49ers are going to want to use at defensive tackle. I just don't see them wanting to break the market there, or really go over anything above $5 million. So that's where like an Onyemata or a Puna Ford. I'm a little bit on the high side with Onyemata in that one. That 2 years, $15 million. I think you're going to be looking more along the lines of Greg Gaines, 2 years, $3 million. Kerry Hyder, bring him back, or Jerry Tillery. I think you're looking at those types of players in the middle for the 49ers. You have Kalia Davis as well, is another one that the 49ers are he was on the team, but not on the team. So he's going to be a guy that's going to, I think, step into the rotation in some form. Big guy, kind of reminds you of a DJ Jones is built, but he's just a little more athletic. So I think a defensive tackle, watch what Kalia Davis can do. I think that's a big one to keep an eye on. He also says former Steeler defensive tackle Chris Wormley got a high run defensive grade from PFF. He's on Barry Baller's radar. That's another name that I was looking at. Wormley, not that expensive either. He's one of those guys that's kind of on the lower end in terms of the cost. You look at his stuff. You mentioned his PFF run stopping grade. PFF has him. Let me see where he is. 1 year, $2 million. That's not too bad. And they had him as the number 19 defensive interior player last season out of 126. He was 28th the year before. So I think that's a good name to look at right there. He's a little bit on the older side, 29 years old, but you bring him in for a year, kind of fill that as a stopgap type of player. That's kind of what the 49ers have been doing. So really good there. How about the Niners, Jack? As veteran options, would you prefer to bring in Justin Houston or Jadeveon Clowney? Both will be relatively inexpensive. Houston got 9.5 sacks last season, so he's still producing. Justin Houston is a name that I would definitely take a look at there. I think I would go with Houston over Clowney. The productivity is there with Houston more so than it is with Jadeveon Clowney. So if you can get him in on a more team-friendly contract, then that would definitely be a direction to go. And again, this is another a name that, if I remember, the 49ers have shown interest in the past was Justin Houston. It might have even been last year that they were looking at him. So wouldn't be shocked if the 49ers were to bring in a guy like Justin Houston to help out along that defensive line. Also, Luke Walsh says, trading 99, 101, 102 fetches a late second. Trading 99, 101 fetches a mid-third. Much better to let best player available fall by plugging as many holes in free agency as possible. I agree. And that's kind of that's what I was trying to say in the beginning. And you do a better job of describing it here, Luke, with the way that you laid it out. And I agree. I think what the 49ers are going to do is, for the most part, they're going to plug as many holes as they can in free agency. This is the method of what they've done, is they plug as many holes as they can in free agency because it comes first. So you plug up as many holes as you can. And then by having all of your holes plugged, you're not stuck having to go with a player. If there's a player that you really, really, really feel like you need to get, you can trade up and get them and use some of your picks to get them, or you just sit there and let the board fall down. Or instead of using 3 picks to get one, maybe you're using 2 of them to bump up to the middle of the third to get that guy that you want if he's falling a little bit. So I think that's pretty much the direction that we go. So I like this comment here, Luke. I think this is a really good one in terms of what you're going to see the 49ers. If you're looking at their method, this is what they've done. They fill holes during free agency, and then they just draft off of that based on who's left and what players fit their needs, and kind of what they're going after. So those are your defensive end targets. And then for me, I really think for the 49ers, their biggest need going into this offseason is safety. I mentioned this at the top of the show. You look at the 49ers, they don't have a long-term solution at safety opposite of Talanoa Hufanga. George Odom, a heck of a special teams player, and so on. And you look at but he isn't a guy that you're going to want to have be your long-term starter or even your starter for the entire season. If he has the spot start, that's one thing. But if you're looking, you don't want him to be your starter for 17 weeks. And they don't really have anybody else on the roster that's young. This is the one spot where you look at the 49ers. They have Talanoa Hufanga. They don't have depth at this spot. And so I think when you start to look at the 49ers at safety, they're going to probably do a couple of different things here. This is the one spot where I think they might want to splurge. And I think that Jesse Bates, I know he's a name that's already been linked to the 49ers, and he'd be a terrific addition for the 49ers. Jesse Bates is exactly what the 49ers need to add this season. He's young. He's only 26, just barely turned 26. He's been in the league for 5 years already. But this is a guy who plays like crazy. He's played over 1,000 snaps each year. That's when you're combining his defensive snaps plus special teams. He's played over 1,000 snaps in each of his first 5 seasons. He's a ball hawk, just like Talanoa Hufanga, gets after the ball. And at just 26, he can be here for a long period of time, which means you can go out and you can give him a big contract for a long, give him a 5-year, $80 million contract. That's what PFF is projecting his contract to be. Jesse Bates, the 49ers, would be a terrific addition, I think. I think this is the direction that they need to go. Jesse Bates would be my top option. At safety, my number 2 option, and it really depends on what you need or what you desire from your free safety. Chauncey Gardner-Johnson from the Eagles. He's a former New Orleans Saint. This is a guy who he's your thumper, right? He's the guy that's going to get in there. And he's kind of he's going to get in there and he's going to try to blow receivers up. He wants to separate them from the football. He also has that versatility that Jimmy Ward used to have, or has still, I guess, where he can play in the slot or on the back, in the deep end. He was primarily a slot player for the Saints during his time in New Orleans. So Chauncey Gardner-Johnson is another player that I like for the 49ers. I think if you look at his overall, again, he had a terrific season for the Eagles this last year. Had a little bit of injury concerns. But this is a guy you're looking at bringing him in. It's going to be about a $34.5 million contract over 3 years. So a little over $11 million per season. Do you go that direction or do you go with the Jesse Bates? And I think I would lean more towards the Jesse Bates. And I'm also not going to rule out the 49ers possibly bringing back both of their safeties from last season. Jimmy Ward. You look at the numbers on PFF, they're projecting a contract for Jimmy Ward of about $13.5 million over 2 years. And that sounds about right. He's on the, he's over 30 now. He missed the start of last season due to hamstring injury. That's what opened the door for Tayshaun Gibson to take over the free safety role to begin with. Ward comes back and moves to the slot, played well in the slot. And if he's willing, on a recent Instagram Live, he said, don't roll out a return to the 49ers. I think it's really going to depend on what his market looks like. I think when it comes to Jimmy Ward, there's a big possibility that the numbers aren't going to be there at that spot for him. I know last season we had this discussion quite a bit with Jaquiski Tartt. He ends up with the Eagles and it doesn't even make the roster. And I think could be something that we see with Jimmy Ward. I think he's a guy who is a good leader for the 49ers. He's versatile, which really helps them out. And I would think if they bring Jimmy Ward back next year, they're not for 2023. They're not bringing him back to necessarily be your starting safety. They're bringing him back to be that guy that's going to play in the slot. So we'll see how that works. Let's see what else. Let me see. Daniel Garcia wants to say, do you think if Bates has not landed, Gibson will possibly be back on a 1 to 2 year deal? Then you draft a safety. Hopefully Emmanuel Mosley is brought back as well. Yeah, I'm not getting into corners, but yes, Emmanuel Mosley is a guy who I would like to see be brought back if they can make the numbers work there. And I do agree with you that if they don't get a guy like Bates or a guy like Gardner-Johnson, there's a high possibility that the 49ers would bring back Tayshaun Gibson on a 1 2 year deal. And I do think that if that's the direction that they go, if they come back with a vet, that it's going to be they'll be drafting a safety as well. If it's a guy like Bates, that takes safety kind of off your radar for the draft, because Bates on the younger side, he's going to be around for a long period of time. So, but if it's Bates, the safety in the draft, I think, falls off quite a bit. If it's Gibson or Jimmy Ward, those are going to be shorter term deals. I think you look to draft a safety to have that young guy that can be ready to go when the time is called. So, but and Luke Wall says Ward at slot in 2023 would be groovy. I think so as well. The thing with Ward, what I really like about him in the slot is he brings you that physical presence in the slot that you don't get with a guy like Samuel Womack, who started off the season there, or even Diamond Lenore, who played in the slot quite a bit in the first portion of the season. With Jimmy Ward, you get a guy who is more of a safety, but he brings the physicality of a linebacker in a way. I mean, he's not quite a linebacker, but he's a solid third quasi linebacker when the Friars are in their nickel, which they would play a lot anyway. Most teams are. So I think that would be a really good way. And again, the other one I had there was Tayshaun Gibson, probably as a possibility. You know, he wasn't even on the radar for 49er fans. He was signed in the middle of training camp last season. After Ward went down, they signed him. If I remember correctly, Tayshaun Gibson had his workout for the 49ers actually in Minnesota when the 49ers were out there in Minnesota for their joint practices with the Vikings. That's when Gibson tried out with the team, signed shortly thereafter, went out to have a terrific season, bunch of interceptions, led the team in interceptions actually. He's projected to get a 1-year deal, 1.25. That's right around the veteran minimum. If they can bring back Gibson and draft a safety in the early one of their third round picks, or maybe early fourth, that would be a guy who would be a long-term solution opposite of Talanoa. I think that would be a nice way for the 49ers to go there as well. So a lot of options for the 49ers at the safety spot. Now, let's get into really quick. I want to talk a little bit about the quarterbacks with the 49ers. And let's get into Brock Purdy a little bit. So let's just do it. What I want to do here is a quick update on Brock Purdy, where he stands, what to look for with him, how he impacts Trey Lance, and how he impacts the quarterback position as a whole for the 49ers in terms of their targets. So Brock Purdy underwent successful UCL surgery with Dr. Keith Meister on Friday. That's the good news. And the better news is that the procedure that was performed was the internal brace procedure. That's what the 49ers had been hoping for. That's what Brock Purdy had been hoping for. So the internal brace procedure with Brock Purdy, that's a good deal there. So the next thing for Brock Purdy, and you look at the 49ers, they put out a statement shortly after the surgery was done, is that Brock Purdy had the successful UCL surgery. They were able to insert the internal brace, and that he will begin a throwing program around 3 months. And that's where they left it. And so from there, it's all about how well does Brock Purdy progress. And you look at NFL quarterbacks that have had UCL injuries, there's not very many of them. The only known case of a quarterback that I know of that has had the internal brace procedure is actually another former 49er, Nick Mullins. Nick Mullins underwent the internal brace procedure after the injury he sustained against the Cowboys in 2020. He was back throwing around 3 months. He was cleared at 5 months. Now, that doesn't mean that that's going to be the case for Purdy. Everybody's different, but that's a good possibility there. And if it stays at 6 months, which is the number that had been thrown around early on in this process, if it stays at 6 months, that's a 24-week wrap up. So that puts him back with the team around the 25th of August, which is the day after the final preseason game, which is really 2 weeks before the start of the regular season. The one thing that I'll say here is, just because he's not cleared doesn't mean Brock Purdy's not going to be around the 49ers. I would expect Brock Purdy to spend almost his entire recovery around the 49ers facility. From what I understand, he's going to be taking a little bit of time away right now as the surgery is completed. He's going to take a couple of weeks here. But as the team starts to come back for their OTA program, remember, they have OTs actually start prior to the on-field work that we cover. But Brock Purdy will be spending most of his recovery here in Santa Clara, working with the 49ers training staff to be monitored and those types of things. So the 49ers are going to have a really good handle on where Brock Purdy is as this process goes through. Once they begin their on-field work, the on-field work for the team would be around May, which means I think OTAs are going to be in early June. And right around early June, guess what happens there? That's right. Brock Purdy will begin to throw right around that time period. That's the 3-month mark. If you look at it, March, April, May, June. So he's going to be throwing right around that time that they have their mini camp. Purdy, like I said, Purdy's going to be around. He's going to be throwing around the team. They're going to know how his arm's performing. He's going to be able to be in all the meetings. He's going to be able to participate in a lot of those pieces. Once training camp comes around, he's most likely not going to be cleared at the beginning of training camp. Again, that's a little early. That would be closer to the 5-month time period, would be around the start of training camp. Not going to put that expectation on him, but he's going to be around the team. Again, think about what happened last year with Jimmy Garoppolo, right? As training camp rolled around, Jimmy Garoppolo began, he wasn't practicing with the team, but he was out there throwing before practice. He was visible. I think you're going to see Brock Purdy be around the team. He may even be out there around practice a little bit, not going to actually be going through practice. I think when you look at quarterbacks and a guy like Brock Purdy, you have to remember too, he didn't play with the starters during training camp at all. He didn't do anything really with the starters even during camp. I think when you look at quarterbacks at different in the NFL, especially, these guys can get a lot just by mental reps. He's going to be doing his throwing. He's going to be having his workouts on the side. Just because he's not doing it in training camp, it's going to be a little bit different. We'll see the direction. We'll see how this plays out. In the meantime, Trey Lance is going to have every opportunity to earn the job. Trey Lance isn't going to have Brock Purdy taking reps from him throughout the offseason program. Trey Lance won't be getting reps taken from him by Brock Purdy early on in training camp. If Trey Lance can show that he's the guy, that he deserves to be the starter, that he's playing at a high level, he's improved his game from where he was in the past, it'll be, I think that would be good for the Flyers. It's going to be good for Trey Lance. He's going to have his opportunity here. So we'll see the direction that this takes as it plays out. Again, it's all depending on how well Brock Purdy's recovery goes. But one of the reasons that they pushed back the surgery from the original date, which was the 22nd, was due to the inflammation around the arm. It's a good thing that they pushed it back from the standpoint of the less inflammation, the less stiffness, the less likely that you're going to have those issues in terms of stiffness, especially post-surgery. So that's one of the reasons why they're that off. And here's the other thing too around this. If you remember, when Trey Lance underwent his ankle surgery, he had to go back and get a second one. He just had a second surgery in late December to remove some stuff from the original surgery, some stuff that was kind of bothering the tendons and ligaments around in that ankle. So one of the things that I heard was from some folks was that was good news for Trey Lance. That was a sign that things were progressing in the right direction. Well, maybe the pushing back Brock Purdy surgery is going to be a sign that this is going to be a good deal for him. I don't know. I'm not a doctor. I play one here on YouTube, but we'll see how this all plays out. I would expect, again, though, I don't think it's not like the Flyers are going to show up in training camp and go through everything, and then all of a sudden Brock Purdy's just going to show up one day and they're not going to know how well he's been throwing or any of those kind of things. He's going to be working out at the team facility throughout most of this offseason. So they're going to get a very close-up view of where he is as this goes through, and it's going to help them make decisions. And Brock Purdy could have some impact on what the 49ers do in terms of quarterback and who they're able to bring in. If you look out there, some of the top names in terms of targets for the 49ers, we'll start off with Baker Mayfield. This is a name that's been linked to the 49ers quite a bit. He was a number one player taken in the 2018 draft. He hasn't lived up to that expectations, but you look at what he's done, and he had a strong season in 2020 when they had their coaching change out there. That first year with that new staff, played well, 11-5, went to the playoffs. They beat Pittsburgh on the road, had a really good game on the road the following week against Kansas City, just fell short. That was one where I think they had a fumble like through the end zone on one of their drives after a completion and things like that. It's been all downhill since there for Mayfield. But this is a guy who, if you can bring him in to compete, to be compete with Trey Lance, compete to be the starter, compete to get a backup role, that would make a ton of sense here for the 49ers. I think a guy like Baker Mayfield, if you're bringing him in, that says a lot about your belief in Trey Lance as well, because I think is you're looking for somebody that's going to be able to compete with him here. Mayfield could be a possibility to be a starter out in a place like Tampa Bay, for example. They have a young quarterback out there that they're going to be looking to try to take over from Tom Brady. Mayfield has an opportunity to go there and compete for the starting job. So it'll be interesting to see if the 49ers are even going to be able to be in play for him. Another couple of names that I really like, Jacoby Brissett, veteran, been around the block quite a bit. He's made 48 starts in his career. What I like so much about Jacoby Brissett is he doesn't turn the ball over, and the 49ers have shown the ability to be successful when they don't turn the ball over more than their opponents. So he's not a big playmaker, but he doesn't screw it up, and that's the main thing that you're looking for, I think, out of a backup quarterback. And so Jacoby Brissett would be a really good option there. And another name, I got two more names, not done yet. Andy Dalton. He was with New Orleans last year. The 49ers have shown interest in Dalton in the past. They're rumored to be very high on trying to pick him up in 2021 to pair with Trey Lance. So I think Andy Dalton makes a ton of sense for the 49ers here as well as a backup. And then last but not least, I've seen this name brought up a couple of times over in the comment section, and I agree. Marcus Mariota. Marcus Mariota as a backup quarterback, a guy that can come in, a veteran option, makes a ton of sense. He has versatility in terms of his ability to run. We've seen that firsthand when the 49ers took on the Atlanta Falcons last year. We got to see that. I think he was 13 of 14 in that game throwing, had some big gains on the ground. Marcus Mariota probably going to be on the cheaper side as well. That's a good one there for me is Mariota. Daniel Garcia mentioned that one as well. He says told Bryant Mariota would be awesome, but he also will look for a number 2 contract at least. We'll see. I mean, there's a number of spots that are out there, and it's going to be interesting to see how the 49ers are able to manage this. Again, do any of these veteran types want to come for a possibility of only being your number 3? I think that's the biggest question, and that's going to be it'll be interesting to see how they're able to overcome that. Bringing in a Baker Mayfield and some of these other names, again, I think points to maybe a lack of belief in Trey Lance in terms of him being able to be the guy. We'll see. Because again, I don't know if any of these players want it. The hard part is if you're the number 3 quarterback, you're not active on game day. And if you're not active on game day, you're not getting the full check. And so I just find it to be an interesting one. Even a guy like Jarrett Stidham might be in play here. They're going to be signing. They're going to be having to bring in quarterbacks. I think you look at the 49ers, there's going to definitely be one veteran that they sign in for agency, at least. And then I think they go the route of the draft for another one. I think you're going to see them add 2 quarterbacks. They're going to have Trey Lance, a veteran, and a rookie. I think throughout OTAs and minicamp and the beginning of the training camp, that gives them 3. And then once Brock Purdy is fully healthy, that would give them 4. And then that's where they need to make a decision. That's why when you look at these veteran options and the names that I'm putting out there, it can be a little tough. And I think I'm looking forward to seeing the sales job the 49ers are able to do at the quarterback spot. Now, just really quick before we jump off, there's a couple other spots too that the 49ers are going to be looking at. Robbie Gould has told a couple of different people, Adam Schefter and Matt Maiocco both, that he's looking to be elsewhere next year, that he's going to go into free agency. He doesn't expect to be with the 49ers in 2022 and 2023. So if that's the case and the 49ers aren't able to bring him back, Matt Barrows also reported that he believes when all is said and done, that Gould's going to be back with the 49ers. So, and I kind of tend to agree that that's a possibility. We've seen this play out with the 49ers before, but let's say that doesn't work out. At kicker, I think here's three names, throw them out relatively quickly. One name 49ers fans are going to be familiar with, Chase McLaughlin. McLaughlin was with the 49ers back in 2019. He's the guy that missed a field goal against Seattle in overtime or right before overtime. I don't know if it was in overtime or right before overtime, but missed a badly missed a game-winning opportunity for the 49ers there in the game that they ultimately became their first loss of the season. But he was kicking with the Colts last year, did pretty well. He's projected to get a contract in the range of about $4 million per year. Eddie Pinheiro, another one. He was with the Panthers last year. He's bounced around a little bit, about $2.5 million there for Pinheiro. Puts the ball in the end zone on kickoffs, which is something the 49ers could really utilize as well. Another name to think about here, Matt Gay from the Rams. He has a projected contract of about $5 million per year. So at that point, you're kind of, do you want to go 4 years, $20.5 million at the kicker spot? Or do you want to go with Robbie Gould for 1 year, about that, $5 million range, or 2 years for 10 or whatever it is, where you can lower his cap hit this first season and ramp it up more in the second. So it'll be interesting. But those are three free agent names: Chase McLaughlin, Eddie Pinheiro, Matt Gay at the kicker spot that the 49ers could add there. Got a bunch of comment section is going wild. Bing says he was with Matt Gay on that one. And Brian Culp, when it comes to the kicker, he's saying move up in the draft for Jake Moody from Michigan. That wouldn't be a bad idea. That's one of the things, if I've seen some people talk about the difficulty of getting a kicker through the draft. Well, the 49ers, last time the 49ers won a Super Bowl in 1994, guess what? They had a rookie kicker in it was the former Doug Bryan, the former Cal Bear, was their kicker. They drafted him with a third-round pick in the 1994 draft. He was their field goal kicker as a third rounder. So if they get Moody, let's say in the third or the fourth, I'm sure there'll be a lot of people yelling and screaming. But at the same time, if you can put the ball through the uprights on a consistent basis, nobody's going to complain about it. And one other spot I want to talk about is the wide receiver position. Wide receiver targets. The 49ers are pretty well stocked at this spot. You look at it right now, they're five deep. They have Deebo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk, Juwan Jennings, and then they have Ray McLeod as well. So that's your top four. And then you have Danny Gray, who was the draft pick last year, at 5. So you're pretty well stocked there. But by all accounts, the 49ers are still looking at bringing in new guys, a name that's been connected with the 49ers all throughout last season. Even he ended up not playing at all because of injuries and whatnot. But Odell Beckham Jr. had a workout down in Arizona, I believe it was, late last week. 49ers were in attendance. If the 49ers could get Odell Beckham Jr., that would be a terrific signing. The 49ers haven't had a player like this at wide receiver, a guy with hands like this. I don't know when the last time they had a guy that could catch the ball like Odell Beckham. There was a report I saw today where he's looking at north of $20 million. I don't think anybody's going to give him that much money. He's coming off a season. He just missed a season. So I don't think any team's going to want to spend over $20 million a year on Odell Beckham. But if you could bring in Odell Beckham, that is a guy that he's better than, if you keep him and you're able to keep Brandon Ayuk and keep Deebo Samuel, he's better than Juwan Jennings. You can argue Jennings as a run blocker is better. Okay. But you need a guy that can catch the ball at the end of the day. Juwan Jennings has great hands. He's a terrific third down receiver. terrific in the red zone. But Odell Beckham Jr., that would be a very good signing. You look at him and from the video that I saw of his workout, which was limited, but you just look at the size and the speed, and the hands are all the hands are still there. The size is there as well. He looks like he's put on a lot of strength and a lot of muscle. And like I said, I know that there was a report out today that he's looking for $20 million a year. Don't think he's going to get that. So we'll see what happens there. How about the Niners says that that there was a report that the 49ers want to trade Brandon Ayuk to the Giants for a first-round pick to draft a right tackle and sign Odell Beckham Jr. to replace Ayuk. What are my thoughts? Yeah, I don't know. 49ers trading Ayuk to the Giants for a first-round pick. I don't know who they would trade him to. You look at the 49ers, you look at the players they have. Ayuk just happens to be one of those guys who you might be able to get a first-round pick for. There's not very many others that the 49ers have. So if they want to get up there, then it would probably be Ayuk that you would move. Is this going to happen? I think to get to this, the reason that the name of the Giants was brought up was because there was a picture of of Brandon Ayuk in a Giants uniform that he liked. So that's why the Giants are being mentioned at all. So, I don't think that the 49ers are going to get rid of Brandon Ayuk yet. But maybe they do. I could see this being a scenario where they do go ahead and they get rid of Ayuk. They bring in Odell Beckham. You get some capital there for somebody that's going to be young that you can keep around. You bring in a veteran that can kind of keep you updated, those types of things. So there's a lot of different directions that you can go here. First round right tackle, possibly. The deal that the 49ers gave Colton McKivitz to come back, that doesn't scream to me that that's starter money in any way. So I think they're still very much in the market at right tackle. So we'll see the direction that goes. So another couple of wide receiver options, though, before we move forward. Matt Collins is a name to keep an eye on here. He was with the Raiders last year. He was a guy that I thought the 49ers might have gone after last year in free agency. Hollins, the reason that he's a fit for the 49ers, he's a solid receiver, but he's a special teams guy as well. And I think if the 49ers are looking to add a wide receiver, anybody that they bring in, if they're going to expect him to be active on game days, is going to have to be somebody that can play special teams. So that's where Matt Collins comes in. That'd be about $4 million a year, 2 years, $8 million. Paris Campbell is another name to keep an eye on. He was with the Colts last season, 1 year, $2.5 million type of contract there. I think, at this point, if you're looking at any of these three, Beckham Jr., that's a big money opportunity there. Hollins, Campbell, they're going to have to be able to do multiple things in order to make the roster. 49ers went that direction last year with that sixth guy being more of a special teams kind of player. They kept bringing up the guys off of the practice squad for that other role as kind of like their sixth. They didn't have a sixth on the active roster that was on the practice squad, and they kept kind of rotating guys through there. Slayton, forming the Giants, that's definitely another one there, Jay. So we'll see the direction that they go. Robert Marquez says that Laken Tomlinson just took a pay cut from the Jets. He should have stayed. It's good for him to go and be with the Jets. Trust me, the 49ers improved at left guard. Aaron Banks improved the play that they got at left guard. Much cheaper. Tomlinson out with the Jets, right where he belongs. Let them spend the money and do that on a player who is a little bit. The best part about Laken Tomlinson is that he played every week. As far as what he actually put on the field, they didn't take a step back with Aaron Banks. They maintained that level, I think. So that's a good one there. Just kind of looking through the comments really quick. Harold says, yes, special teams. That's in regards to the wide receiver, if you're looking to add somebody in there at the back end of the roster. Jack, would you look into Braxton Berrios? I don't know. I mean, Berrios primarily when he's on special teams, he's a returner. They already have that guy in Ray McLeod. So I think that's a duplication there. Berrios, special teams guy, but more as a returner, not as a coverage guy or anything like that. So probably not. I get where you're going with this one though, but Ray McLeod gave the 49ers a lot last year in his first season with the team. He had his really only mistake was against the Cowboys, and they were able to overcome that in the playoffs there in the divisional round. So Braxton Berrios, good name. I get where you're coming from. I just don't think that that's a direction that the 49ers would go. Yan says, nothing against Banks. Center is more important. Creed is a stud. Absolutely. I do think that that's a position of that, if they don't bring back Jake Brendel, I do think they're going to be making some moves. I don't know if they're going to break the bank there. We'll see. Daniel Garcia Burford had a solid rookie year, though. He did. For a rookie, it was a solid year. You look at what he did. There was definitely some struggles at times, but for being a rookie, he had a good season, and there's room to build. And we'll see the direction that they go there. Daniel Brunskill is a unrestricted free agent. Will be interesting to see if he comes back to the 49ers or if he ends up elsewhere. Just want to check out, see if there's anything else really quick before we close out the show. Don't see anything. So just want to wrap it up by saying, thank you everybody for taking the time. This was the 49ers free agency preview show. Hope everybody was able to hear some names that are of interest to them. Definitely, I think that these are names that the 49ers are going to be involved with. There's probably going to be a few that'll be signed as well. So we'll see the direction that they take. Again, it all kicks off tomorrow, 9 a.m. The NFL's open tampering period is going to kick off. So we'll see how the 49ers go there. It'll be a lot of fun. But here's the deal. Keep it before you leave today. If you're watching this and you're not already a member of with the channel, make sure that you hit the subscribe button. Hitting that subscribe button is key. You hit the subscribe button, and that allows you to you're on the channel, but when you hit that subscribe button, hit the little bell notification. When you hit the bell notification, that allows you, so every time we go live, you are notified. That way you don't miss anything. So as news hits and I come on, don't always do it live. Sometimes if there's a news that breaks, I'll just jump on and do a quick video to update you. So you can actually make Inside the 49ers with Jack Hammer your one source when it comes to 49ers news and updates as they happen. Last but not least, do me this favor, hit that like button as well. The likes are what really help drive YouTube here. The more likes that shows get, the more likes that channels get, the more that they get pushed out in front of other folks. So if you guys could hit that like button, that'd be fantastic. And also let your friends and family know. Let your other people that you know that are around you that are 49ers fans, let them know about Inside the 49ers with Jack Hammer here on YouTube. Hit that like button. Tell them to come check it out. We'll have a lot of fun as the off season progresses, and then once the season comes around and training camp and so on and so forth. So thanks to everybody who took the time to check this out. We're talking soon. Like I said, keep it locked in here to Inside the 49ers for all your updated news and updates as they happen. Take care, everybody, and we'll be talking to y'all soon. Take care.